Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Honourable guests, welcome to the 47th Philippine Mining Club Luncheon. My name's Kevin Lewis. I hope you all have an enjoyable, informative day with us today. Just before we get going, I'd like to mention the people that first is our bronze marketing partners, Intertech, We Are Minerals, David Brown, Santa Solo. Today we've got Mr. Bill Stevens, the Managing Director for Asia. Bill, where are you? Can you just stand up, please, mate? Bill's in the middle. Give Bill a bit of a round of applause, please. And John Cuthbertson is with him, the Director for David Brown Gear Systems Philippines. BF Metals. Unfortunately, Kilby isn't with us, but there are some representatives from BF Metals here today. Site Work Ready. The General Manager, Brett McVie, is somewhere. Brett, if you don't mind standing up, please. There he is, Brett. Our silver marketing partners, Oztai Geophysics Consulting. Jared McNeil is in Thailand at the moment, so he won't be with us. Oztai, advice and guidance in geophysical exploration programs being carried out in the mining and metals sector as well as coal sector. Oztai Geophysical Consultants also provide a wide range of services to the environmental, groundwater and engineering industries. QED, Quest Exploration Drilling, Asia's leading exploration drilling company with modern equipment, well-trained staff, has elevated QED to become the benchmark for international standard drilling operations in terrain that is generally typified by logistical constraints, geological complexity and topographical extremes. And Alan's not with us today, unfortunately. GHD, who are our speakers today. We're very happy to have GHD speaking today. This year, GHD celebrated its 20 years in the Philippines, with current staff numbers at almost, it says 500, but I think it's more like 600, spread across Makati and the Cebu offices. GHD's winning advantage is the ability to leverage on its connected global network of over 9,000 professionals to offer their clients integrated design services ranging from engineering, environmental and project management. Represented today by their country manager, Darren Sheevers. Darren, if you don't mind standing up wherever you are. There he is down the front, sorry. They've also just announced their opening of their new office in Quezon City, so it's a company that's going places. We're glad to have them here today. Autotech. Autotech committed to serve and support our local mining industry, a global company with a local presence. Autotech, the global leader in sustainable minerals and metals processing technologies. Autotech, innovative whole-of-plant integrated processing solutions. Concentrate, power, water and tailings. Autotech, flow sheet development, lab tests to pilot plant to full-scale operations. Autotech, sustainable use of Earth's natural resources. Lockforce, our gold marketing partners. Lockforce have been with the Philippine Mining Luncheon for nearly 6 years now, and we thank them very, very much for it. Provide comprehensive solutions to your business needs through a broad scope of professional service, which include auditing, compliance, security risk assessment, management systems, specialised training and security guarding services. Lockforce has been very active in relation to compliance for the mining industry by providing environmental management systems, security management and guarding services along with intelligence reports. For further information about Lockforce and their services, the Lockforce staff do have a table to the back, the rear on the left side here. So please visit their table and take some of their literature with you. They have their complimentary four-wheel drive handbook and their travel guide there, which are very helpful pocket-sized booklets. So please visit the Lockforce table and take some of their stuff. Lockforce is represented here today by Mr. Matt Brown, their operations director. Matt, if you could just stand up, please. There's Matt. We'll give Matt a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, Lockforce. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Razma is based in the Philippines as president of B2Gold Philippines Gold Processing and Refinery Corp at Masbate Gold. He is the past director of Mount Labo Exploration and Development Corporation. He's also a trustee of the Philippine Mining and Exploration Association. Prior to coming to the Philippines, he was director of N&M Rothschilds and Sons in Australia, in Sydney, for 5 years. He has successfully engineered and managed and contracted mining projects ranging from feasibility studies, project financing, underground rehabilitation and environmental abatement. Johan comes with over 35 years of experience in the mining, civil, construction and resources development, during which time he has directed and participated in startup projects ranging from 15 to 750 mil US in capital. Mr. Razma has significant work experience in the USA, Australia, the Philippines, Indonesia, West Africa, with director and senior management experience. He's a mining engineer graduate from the University of New South Wales in Australia. Professional affiliations for Johan. He's a fellow of the Australian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, AUSIMM. He's also the vice president of the Philippine Minerals Exploration Association. Ladies and gentlemen, can I get you to put your hands together, please, for Mr. Johan Razma.
So, Kevin, you look great, mate. You look normal. I wonder what they were calling you before that. Huh? Admiral. So Leo is not here, as Kevin was saying, so you're not going to hear a lot about bamboo. You're going to hear a lot more about golf. And being similar in age as Leo, I'm somewhat challenged with my memory hard disk storage that God gave me when I was born, you know. These days you can get computers and people with a lot more storage, so I do need notes. But the one thing that I don't need notes for is the patron of the Philippine Mining Club, which is the lovely ambassador, Delia Albert. Please give her a warm round of applause, and thank you for being a great supporter of the mining industry. We will always know that. So talking about golf, because I just caught up with a couple of friends of mine. Chris Holder is here, actually a long friend of mine from the old Masbate days, Leighton. And just talking to Darren a little bit about our golf or lack thereof, you know. And it kind of reminded me about a terrible thing that happened recently at the golf course. A couple, not unlike you and Leia, Chris, they were playing regularly on my course, and I'm not sure what happened, but she was there on the red tee, and he teed off, and he hit her, and right on the side of the head, and she's dead, right on the course. Big drama on the course. But luckily, the course, you know, nowadays there's a lot of medical professions, so they ran right up there, and the doctor said, yes, looks like big direct contusion on the side of the head and cause of death, and there's not much we can do about it, you know. So it's a terrible accident. And then he turned to the guy and he said, look, you know, it's a bit of baffling though. I just wonder, you know, she's got the big contusion on the side of the head, but what's the contusion here on her side here? He said, I took a mulligan. You like that money, didn't you? So cool, but true on golf, yeah. You got to watch out where you stand. So I know Joey Levista, the chairman of OceanaGold, he has said he is coming, so I will give him the due respect by saying he's here in spirit. And then I want to recognize some other important people besides Tony Silva and Brad McPhee that's already been managed. Ryan Cairns, you're not on my VIP list, Ryan, but I see you there. But Brad, Norma, I don't know how you got on this list. I didn't put this list together. Yeah. So Brad is Executive Officer, External Affairs for OceanaGold Philippines now. So used to be a country manager or something like that. So we always wonder what your official title is. So Nelia Halcon, my good friend, where are you? You were sitting. There you are. Table 8. There you are. Nelia is with the Chamber of Mines and has been a pillar in the industry. If you want to know anything about Chamber of Mines, that's Nelia. I got on my list Horace Ramos, but he's a little bit like Joey Levisti. He kind of sneaks in, so keep an eye on him. We got two lovely ladies on my table. We've got Jenny McEwen, which is with the Australian Embassy. She's the first secretary. She's an economist, yeah. And we got somebody that most of us know as Stephanie. I like her. She's part of the Ants Jam, and she loves San Miguel Light, so we have a lot in common already. Are you a golfer? No, see there, okay. Me neither. And we have a couple other guys. We got Joey Eisen, who's the president of PMEA. Where are you? There you go, Joey. And I've been chatting with Joey quite a bit because he's going to have an incredible busy week next week with PMSEA. We're signing a memorable document, which is actually, this is going to be really amazing for the mining industry. It is a document that combines the mining engineers, the geologists, and the metallurgists together in an undertaking to support the responsible reporting of minerals, resources, and reserves as under the Philippine Minerals Resources Code, or PMRC, which is based on JORC, the Joint Ore Reserves Committee. And JORC was originally funded to be implemented here in the Philippines with Oz-8 in the time before Stephanie started drinking San Miguel Light a few years ago. And that's going to be signed on the Thursday night in Baguio. And then the associates of these associations are the likes of PMEA and PMSEA. About that, isn't it, Joey? Quite a few like that. Yeah. Stock exchange. That's right. Yeah. So this is actually when somebody puts out an announcement, say we have so many tons at a certain grade and it's worth so much, you need to have somebody qualified to look at that. And it used to be, as a foreigner, you would have to be somebody from the Australian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy or somebody from Canada of National Institute 43101. And you would have to fly them over, pay them their daily dollar consultancy fee. And now with the PMRC, we can actually elevate that and become an international organization supported by this tripartite agreement. And then you have reciprocity with the other organizations of OSIMM and NI43. Very, very exciting. Very cautious, Joey, because, you know, when you say you're competent, you really have to be competent. And you are signing on things, so it's very exciting. And so Joey's here, and he's also, he gave me a little bit of chismis about he's also on the PMSEA award committee. So he's been going around to various mining projects and evaluating them, how they're doing on forest land and processing plant, etc. So when you have the next Friday, there's the awards meeting. If you want to know the chismis of who's going to win, who's not going to win, ask Joey, table 4, right there. And then just lastly, I just want to recognize my partner in crime, Chris Acosta, in the back, table 11. He's the president of Phil Manera, but he's really the power engine of Masbate Gold Project. So one heck of a guy. So. And we have more. We have on the Lock Force table here, we have Matt, your partner. Matt is not here, right? It's usually Matt and Matt, right? Brown? Yeah. So Matt Jones is not here. But we have Mickey. So Mickey's also with Lock Force. Claire Prieto, Sales and Marketing. Yeah. And Jeff Callis, CEO of Prime Metro, BMD Corporation, over here. How are you, Jeff? Marcel Cardano, Head of Business Development, also Prime Metro. Marcel, are you here? No, here. Not. Oh, in the back. There you are. On table number 8, sitting with Nelia. And of course, Rob Knott will introduce later. Ian Fraser, also from GHD, and Darren Shrive, the champion golfer, country manager from GHD, also in the Lock Forest table up front. Hobnobbing with Brad Norman. There you go. Couple of events that I didn't mention is GeoCon. That's the regular annual organization of geologists. That's December 11 and 12. If you're a geologist, you already would know this about. It's at the Manila Hotel. Ryan Cairns, you are going? Are you going? Yeah, so GeoCon, December 11, 12. Joey, you're going? See? Brad, you're not going? Maybe. Okay. Manila Hotel. And the one event that you must go to, Kevin mentioned that, December 3rd, PMEA Christmas Party. If you're a PMEA member, it's free. If you're not member, show anyway. It's really cheap, good wine, good camaraderie. It's going to be at the Diamond Hotel up in Legazpi Street near Greenbelt 1. Sandy, you're up, man. So Sandy's going to give us a brief overview of the stock market. Sandy is he's also a golfer, by the way. He's a good golfer, so he doesn't really talk to me very much. He's with First Metro Securities, so that's where he gets all his data from, and that's his day job, I think. So.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege again to be able to share a few thoughts on the stock market and the economy. The mining and oil shares, the biggest is Semi-Rara with a market value of 28 billion pesos over there. And it's 48% of all the mining companies altogether. There would be 7 on the mining and oil list. You have PXP Energy valued at 11 billion pesos, Nicolasia at 7, and Philex Mining 5, Apex Mining 4. So let's just take a look at Semi-Rara Mining, how it did last year. It had a very good run since 2010, and then the overall stock market is healthy despite the appearances of the past year. It's been a rocky year, principally because the top 30 declined heavily. Most of the money flew out and went to the mainland United States. So I see that since 2013, our stock market has rocked back and forth between 7,000 points and 9,000 points. There was a strong growth spurt from 2009 up to 13, and then suddenly it started to take a rest and just move sideways from 2013 to the present. Okay, so what's going to happen the next few years? I think that for stock market in general, not a steep upward slope, but a gentler upward trajectory. So I think we're now here at 7,000 as of this morning. Friday morning, stocks are trading at 7,000 points. Nothing wrong with that. It just looks lower than January. But I think the future is something like this, which I think is reasonable to assume that we will have steady 6% economic growth. I think lots of people are very negative on stocks because they think the economy might grow 0 or -3. So I start asking, how likely is it for our Philippine economy to grow 0 or -3? The way things are going, I think it's going to be very bad. So I think people are over-dramatizing the possibility of low or negative economic growth. And they're refusing to believe that the stock market could continue moving gently upwards and sideways. So, okay, so that's what. Lots of people are thinking, I'm so afraid I don't want to buy stocks because I think it's going to be heading south. Why would it head south? I think the only reason that the overall market would head south is if the economy were announced to be growing 0 or -3. in terms of Philippine resources, we are very rich in minerals, and there's plenty of potential for the economy to be boosted by greater exports, hopefully, of minerals. The difficulties are politics and government, and to some extent, to a very minor extent, the difficult geology. Meanwhile, for the economy, one of the biggest assets of the country is that we have many, many productive workers. Like half the population are very productive workers, unemployment is low, and there's a big supply of young people ready to graduate from trade school, vocational school, or college and join the workforce. Meanwhile, the liabilities are just like before, politics and government being very messy, and they all lack a sense of nation. So this is what my friend Professor Paul Dumol said. Other countries went through difficulties, but then they emerged as a nation. For example, they went through a war against foreign aggression, or they endured a civil war, and then after that they were united as a nation. But the Philippines will have to figure out what in the next 100 years will make it united as a nation. For the meantime, people are loyal to their families and communities and regions, but not to the entire nation. So it'll take a while before this problem will be overcome socially and culturally. For people to be more to set aside the negative practices of corruption. In the meantime, with or without all the difficulties and the messy politics and government, you still have miraculously economic growth in spite of all the difficulties and the lack of planning. And it's partly because of all the hardworking people. I normally tell my audiences that who do you think makes the economy grow? Is it the NEDA or the central bank or the central government? Or is it all the workers out there? I think if people would rather vote for all the hardworking workers out there exerting their very best effort, and they collectively really push the economy forward, rather than some planner in some obscure office thinking about what economic output should be. So I see that our economy produced $168 billion worth of goods and services in 2009. That was the weakest point recently. And then now we're running at $313 billion of production in 2017. I think maybe 2018 will be 320 or 25. And we're chasing the Malaysia and Thailand, because I think they're running at 350 billion and Thailand at 400 billion of economic output. We're chasing them, Malaysia and Thailand. We are increasing that economic output at a declining rate, so it looks like we're running out of ideas on how to make that economy grow faster. So it behooves, therefore, the government planners to allow better exports to finally exceed the imports. And that's one of the problems of the country, too many imports and not enough exports, because they're frustrating all the other potential export items like minerals. And then inflation is terrible, but it's been conquered before, and it will be conquered again. And I believe that's 6.7%, given lower prices of crude oil, and also of finally being able to deal with the problems of food supply. I think that will be tempered and move down to 4% again over the next couple of years. So we still have hope for the future that we can slowly chase up to the level of Malaysia, 347 billion in economic output, eventually work our way up to 490 billion, where Thailand is at the moment, and see whether we can, oops, wrong comma, and Indonesia at 1 trillion of economic output is the role model with so much production, and we should feel threatened by Vietnam producing 241 billion in goods and services per year for their economy. If only we exported more minerals, we could add $1 trillion to that 331. And the International Monetary Fund and World Bank have made their estimates of what the Asian economies would look like 5 years from now. So 2023, they're saying that Indonesia from 1 trillion will be 1.4 trillion. Thailand from 490 billion will move up to 652 billion in output in 5 years. And Malaysia from 347 to 498. Singapore up to 434. And the Philippines will move in its economic production from 331 to 510 billion dollars a year. So I think that there will be growth no matter what. No matter how much you worry and are concerned that we might not grow, I think there will be growth somehow no matter what, in spite of all the problems that make it seem insurmountable. Okay, so thank you very much, and that ends the presentation, and please enjoy your lunch.
So in the meantime, my good friend Joey Levista, I gave you credit, but you hadn't been here yet, so I knew you would be. One thing that Kevin put here on his note is this is the 46th, 7th, this old version, 47th version, 47th meeting of the Philippine Mining Club. And I remember when you started this, Kevin, you've just done a fantastic job pulling this together. It's based on the template of the Melbourne Mining Club, and which I saw some photos of IMARC recently. Were you there, Joey, or you were there before? Yeah, it's a good event, huh? We should go next year. I'm excited. I've never been. I was really excited to see the photos there. It seems to be one of the better events in the world now. Exciting. So. And so the Philippine Mining Club is based after the Melbourne Mining Club, and there's other ones. There's Sydney and the other mining clubs, but we have a lot of support from ex-Indoville guy named Gavin Collery, whom most of you guys would remember, and he's been very supportive. So I'm going to introduce Rob Knott, who is a returnee from Australia, and it actually doesn't say much about your career history of GHD, but I'm going to wing it a little bit here, Rob, because I kind of read through this. It's all very interesting. When I knew GHD in the earlier days in 1998, there was about 3,000 people. Now you have 10,000 people worldwide. You're not just in Australia and Asia. You have expanded into UK, America, South America, and you truly are a global, multidisciplinary engineering company. Your total quality. What's amazing, you're still a privately owned engineering, so that means that the people that work within GHD own the shares, and so that's where the passion is, that's where the quality is. A total quality engineering company. Here within Philippines, they're celebrating their 20th anniversary. Manny Acheta, as Darren pointed out, is 0001. Number one, you're still my number one, Manny, and now you're expanding from Makati. You've expanded to Cebu. You're opening up an office in Quezon City, which is very excited because now Darren's got to go and drive to Quezon City, check the office. Good luck for that. So maybe Rob will buy you a helicopter. But you know, one thing that you guys, GHD does understand is that there's really 4 groups here in the Philippines that bring in new money. And you have tourism, you have overseas contract workers, and you have call centers, of course, very little capital, and mining. And you see that some of the direct foreign investment is struggling with this anti-mining sentiment, but the minerals are always there. And God gave the Philippines these minerals, and they have to be developed, and preferably using GHD. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Rob. Come on up here and give us your presentation. Put your hands together.
Well, that was a fantastic introduction from Yahe, and all off the top of his head as well. You must have paid a bit of attention when you used to work with us a little while ago to go. I'd like to just thank everyone for the opportunity to speak today at the Philippine Mining Club. It's great to be back here in Manila, see some familiar faces in the room, and also meet some long-term clients. I think as I was coming up, it was about 4 years ago. It's quite obvious that things continue to change. And as I travel around the world continues to change with increased volatility. and uncertainty. And as I think back over that time, I'm sure the topics and conversations at these lunches have also varied greatly over that time. You know, I've been around the world this year speaking to a lot of groups as GHD celebrates 90 years in business. And I say that because it's a time frame we don't often reflect on when we think of mining or resource development or business, 90 years. And I'm sure 90 years ago in 1928, a fellow by the name of Gordon Guttridge, an engineer in Melbourne, couldn't have envisaged or imagined the company he started as one person would become something of the scale we have today across the world. Our revenues are just on under $2 billion. We have more than 10,000 employees, as mentioned, but we're a small global corporation. We're small in the world. And something Johan mentioned earlier that makes us increasingly unique in our industry is the fact we are 100% employee-owned. And before I talk about some of the things and some of my observations that give a company a sense of duration, a 90-year sense of purpose, I'll just give you a little bit of perspective on GHD as a company. You see some of our statistics there across the world. I think we've covered them. We're diversified. Mining and resources is just one of our sectors. If you look at where we've started and expanded from a beginning in Australia, we've balanced and diversified our business across North America, which is almost 40% of our revenues these days, into Asia, into South America, and in the Middle East and UK. And that gives you a great perspective of what's happening across the globe and how things are working for us. I think just on our performance there, and safety continues to be a key perspective. I want to make it pretty clear from the outset of my talk over lunch today is that I'm not a miner in terms of my own personal background and career, but I represent an organisation that provides professional services right across all of the sectors, global and regional clients, energy and resources companies, those in their supply chains and those in their demand value chains right across the world. And I thought just to speak at lunch today, I'd bring a perspective of the things I see, not just in the energy and resources sector, but things that impact engineering in its greatest sense across a whole range of industries: the environment, infrastructure, property, and energy and resources sectors. And I thought I'd just leave and talk about 5 things today. I'd first like to talk about sustainability. When you think about 90 years, it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime for many people when we put things into that scale, and yet organisations, countries, civilisations last for periods of time that are much greater. And I think each of us in our professions, when we look inside and think about what we do and why we do it, we look for the things that last. And the greatest legacy that any one of us look back and speak proudly about are the things that last for more than a generation. They last more than a project, for longer than a project cycle, for longer than a few years, for longer than a commodity cycle. They're the things that make us proud. They're the things that make us feel like we're making a contribution. Today, across every profession in our sector, there's an increased social consciousness about everything that we do. whether it be waste, whether it be climate change, whether it be those who are less privileged, whether it be changes to those who are experiencing levels of poverty, there is a global increased consciousness about sustainability. And people are genuinely interested in the impact of our human activity. Corporations are interested. Financiers are interested. Looking at sustainability issues in the way they place their investments. Insurance industries are interested. Who do they provide services to? Who do they choose not to provide services to? And every corporation, every company, every engineer, every supplier in the supply chain are being held to greater levels of accountability about their efforts to build sustainable systems. You know, whether it's the commitment to lower carbon footprints, whether it's a commitment to ongoing community development. Just looking at some of those excellent videos from Oceania just shows some of the things that are possible when we think beyond the project or beyond the cycle to make a difference and to leave a legacy. Whether we look at the development of the enterprises that support us, because more and more as I look around the world, we're not individual companies, we're ecosystems of companies. We work together. The things we do to support each other make us stronger together as companies, and that's what builds strength and builds an infrastructure and an integrated system that lasts. And I think I've learnt this, and we've learnt this over a long time by being an employee-owned firm. As an employee-owned firm, you don't rely on other people for capital. You raise your own capital from your employees. That takes long-term thinking to do that. It creates sustained and requires sustained performance to build that resilience and capability into your company. You need to think about sharing wealth rather than just creating it for a few. And you need to develop long-term sustainability thinking. And it's interesting when you look around the engineering profession, the number of companies that used to be employee-owned that are no longer so. Why is that the case? Well, I'd suggest to you they forgot to think about sustainability. You can't do it in a year. You can't do it in 5 years. It's long-term, consistent planning, thinking, delivering, developing, living your values, giving and creating the future of your organisation that enables you to survive and sustain your business through those changing times. So that's sustainability, the first thing I wanted to speak about. The second point I wanted to talk about over lunch today was the issue of trust. You know, we build trust every day with each other when we do what we say we will do. And it's interesting, around the world, it doesn't matter whether you're in the Philippines or Australia or the UK or the US or Canada or Chile, in some places, the challenge for people, government, companies, shareholders, boards, institutions generally, and future generations, wherever you go in the world today, is a destruction of trust. I don't think we trust each other the way we used to. in many different ways. Right? You see it. And you see it in the increasing conflict that exists between groups in community and institutions, between criticism of governments and the corporate world. And it almost seems that lack of trust is what contributes to the lack so often of a social license to be able to operate. This is something I think in the Philippines you see quite clearly in some way. I often hear, and perhaps have heard many times, a commentary on the things that government needs to do. But governments represent their people. They largely do and respond based on what the people they perceive, their politicians perceive, their society wants them to do. And sometimes within our industry sectors, it's the things that we've done, or in some cases not done, that have resulted in a lack of trust. And I think increasingly as we look forward in every country, whether it's mining and resources, whether it's an infrastructure project, there's a need for all of us, corporations, organisations, representatives of government, to build trust, to do what we say we're going to do. You know, to talk straight, to show respect, to be transparent when we've got it right and be transparent when we've got it wrong, to correct the things that are wrong, to show loyalty and commitment to all of our stakeholders, not just our shareholders, not just the direct community involved, our broader stakeholders, to keep our commitments and to extend trust. You've all probably experienced from time to time, and we see it from time to time, the delays that occur to projects over issues that shouldn't be issues to a trained engineering mind, to an educated person, issues we can see are solvable in many ways, but somehow the outrage that is stirred up around a problem or a project or a mining job or an infrastructure development outweighs any technical risk, any physical risk that comes up in relation to a project. I challenge us all as we look around the world, as we take our respective roles, to think about the issue of trust, how we build it, how we break it, and be careful about the steps that we take. Third thing I want to talk about this afternoon, and I've got 5 things, so you can see I'm making progress here as we go through. But the third thought, as I was contemplating about what to reflect on today, is the question or the issue of adaptation. Now, I look back 10 years in my own career, and what we think about, talk about, and do today are things that I couldn't have imagined even 10 years ago in our world, in our business. You know, you look at Dubai. Recently, someone was talking about Darren getting out to QC, you know, and you see Dubai experimenting with their flying Uber service for individual vehicles. Did you ever imagine 10 years ago that would even be contemplated seriously? Will it happen? I don't know, but it's being trialled right now around the world. Change. And what challenges me with that when I look strategically at a business that's been around for 90 years, is the fear, motivating fear, of not being complacent and really trying to make sure that as organisations we change to adapt and be ready and responsive for our future. We know it's going to be different to what it is today. The resources sector in some parts of the world has seen this, good advances in METs. The use of autonomous vehicles on controlled sites is a reality. Construction robotics in many parts of the world are being experimented with and getting better and better. I mean, you see the transport of resources and materials through driverless freight, trains and other vehicles, some challenges. BHP have a story and an issue they're dealing with at the moment on a train they lost control of, but it's here. It's here. What will it be in 5 years' time? What will it be in 10 years' time? And as humans, we're going to continuously improve and find ways to be more productive, more efficient, more safe in every part of our industry, and to be able to compete in an ever increasingly competitive global market. But think about how we adapt in that area. It's happening not just in engineering sector, it's happening in banking and finance, it's happening in all the sectors, it's happening in the education sector. Disruption enabled by technology. How will we adapt? How do we adapt? And when we do adapt, what is our responsibility to those who are displaced, those who haven't yet got the skill sets to be able to operate in a different world that's technically redefined and technologically redefined from the world we're currently in? We have a responsibility to think carefully about that, to prepare our workforces for the future, not just for today, to look at the development of our education systems to make sure the skills that are required for technologically advanced mining, construction, design, environmental management, every element of what we do, geotechnical investigation, every element of what we do to be able to operate in an automated and an adaptive world. So the fourth point I wanted to raise this afternoon is the issue, and I'll use the word carefully, the issue of the issue of nationalism, right? There's a lot of talk around the world about nationalism, and it's had an impact. I wonder, though, whether nationalism has really ever gone away. We are tribal people, regardless of where we come from. We do relate to the tribes that we identify with in many ways. And the opportunity for governments and the responsibility for governments as the elected leaders of tribes are to, in fact, and have always been, to protect and to maintain and to look after the interests of their tribes. We might have forgotten that as globalism took force and we moved quickly and freely and maybe faster than regulation and legislation could keep up. But ultimately, we'll increasingly and continue, I think, to work and operate in worlds where we're multinational. We're multinational. I was interesting to read, and I don't know whether anyone's read it, the World Economic Forum and the scenario they did on mining and minerals to 2030. If you're doing any strategic planning and you haven't read it, it's worth a read, because they did something good in relation to scenario presenting, and they identified sort of 3 different possible worlds that the future could look like. You know, one was a green trade alliance, where it was the so-called green nations who agreed to trade with each other and exclude others. Possibility. How do our industries look? How do our businesses look in a world like that? They identified the scenario of rebased globalism. So free trade, or trade a bit like we see, but with a greater balance between those with resources and those with capital, and those who by other means, those with demand or markets, and how they may play in a multinational global world. Or they envisaged a world where there was resource security and nationalism goes to its extreme across all global nations. There's protectionism and trade tariffs on every space in which we move. And I don't know what the future is in any of those scenarios, but it's really useful to sit back for a minute and to think about what that might mean for us, and particularly us in a region of the world, and for us as global organisations and those who operate across multi-regions. I think national pride will always dictate that we respect regional differences, that we always take time, regardless of the company or corporation or organisation that we are, to understand national cultures, and that the things we do embrace multinationalism, they mitigate the risks of restriction by being good citizens and good corporate citizens in every country in which we operate. I was recently at the McKinsey Global Infrastructure Initiative in London just a couple of weeks ago. And it was interesting there talking to some different investors, the global pension funds. They have significant wealth, looking to invest in various regions around the world. And one of the things I just observed in terms of them was the way in which, and these were the Canadian pension funds I was having a chat with, the way they use their strategy of partnering with local pension funds in the countries in which they invest. And why do they do that? Well, I said it's a simple strategy. We're mitigating a sovereign risk. No government's going to restrict or move against or make legislation that's going to change and impact the pension investments of its own citizens. So you can see how through partnering within countries and regions, there's an ability to mitigate national and sovereign risk. So the final point, and I wanted to just mention as I speak here this afternoon, is the matter of diversity. You know, diversity, and we're in a world where more than skills, it goes to the issue of cultural diversity in terms of businesses. It goes through to the issue of gender diversity and the participation of women and different thinking in our workforce. I've been proud since I've been chairman to have a board of GHD that has gender diversity of 45%, right, in our board. It's changed the way we think. It's changed our perspective as a company to bring into our boardroom different thinkers and different ways, and it's shaping our success as a company. You know, we're in a sector in engineering, in mining, across the world where the development of women became and remains a significant challenge to have that balanced and that different view of thinking in our boardrooms, at our executive tables. It's good to see a little bit of diversity here in the room today, but often at functions like this it can be less than it is today. And as organisations, I think there is a challenge for us in terms of the issue of diversity. You know, I picked those 5 things to speak about because I think it's fundamental for every organisation to understand its purpose. What are you here for? Not just for today. What will you look back in 50 years' time, 30 years' time, 100 years' time? What will people say about you as an individual, about your organisation? What were you here for? Is that obvious? Did you create something that lasts? Did you do the right thing? Did you build something that is enduring? You know, a director of a company and a board of a company has an obligation. It has an obligation to act in good faith and in the best interests of a company. That company includes its shareholders, but it's not just its shareholders, it includes its stakeholders. It includes its employees, it includes its suppliers, the connected ecosystems of business. And I think collectively, as a group of companies in the Philippines, a group of companies in a sector in the Philippines, we can do so much more together to create a lasting community benefit. What do we stand for? Do we stand for sustainability? Do we stand for trust? Are we focused on the future and what we can adapt to? Are we committed to thinking in a multinational way, respecting the cultures in each region in which we work, building connected communities? Are we committed to thinking differently and embracing diversity? That's a challenge that I give myself regularly to stop, to think about. I'm sharing it with you today because I'd like to encourage others to look and think and do differently. I think if we do, regardless of the country in which we're operating, regardless of the restrictions and winds of change that might influence our world in which we live, I think we'll find greater acceptance for the things that we do. We'll find our reputation is greatly enhanced, that people will look beyond the immediate and see the long-term benefit of organisations, of people working together. You know, these are not new things in any way I'm talking about. You know, the companies around the world have embraced, and we embrace as GHD, the UN Global Compact and the sustainability goals that are endorsed by many organisations. Member companies of the International Council of Mining and Metals have documented 10 principles around which they are going to commit and operate, and many of those things cover the things I've spoken about today in terms of good business, and doing the right thing. So I'd like to close with those comments. I'll leave it to you as a challenge. I was interested as I was just chatting around the tables earlier today. Many of those topics of conversation were coming up. I think they're present in our consciousness. Let's build a sustainable industry that makes a difference and is recognised for the so much good that it does across the world. Thank you.
What a great talk, huh? 10,000 gender diversified GHD staff across the world trust Rob Knott as national chairman to lead this company forth. You're a rare person and a rare speaker to give an inspirational talk. You held our attention without the use of any fancy slides. Very good. Watch out, Australia, the next Prime Minister of Australia.
There are quite a few of our members at ANZCHAMP still struggling with that, including our own board. So could you give us some tips on what you did? Did you have targets? You know, how did you make that change effective?
It's a challenge, and we discussed a lot of things. I think at the end of the day, we set some goals. So we didn't have mandatory targets. We wanted, and our women were quite insistent within our business that targets for the sake of targets didn't work for them. So we set some goals. And they were goals at all levels of our organisation, and it started with the board. It started with the top. I couldn't, as a chairman of a board that, 9 years ago had no females on it, set a goal for our organisation without first setting the example. And over 9 years as director rotations and appointments came up, we searched the world for quality female directors who could help balance the board. And then in line with that, we raised awareness around the business. With the board setting a path, we made it clear to our executive that all senior appointments needed to present diverse candidates in their recommendation. So it wasn't good enough to go out to fill a role and come back with 3 white Anglo-Saxon male candidates and put them up and say this was the best. We said, you have to find a diverse candidate. Now, many of those diverse candidates didn't get up, they didn't have experience, they hadn't been considered for the role. But what it forced people to do was to have a conversation with diverse candidates who may not have been ready for a role. They went through an interview process. It actually created awareness, it raised their profile within the business, and over time that enabled them to take their own development path. But we had to be insistent, and occasionally you had to say, you haven't done the interview process well enough. We can't consider this until you've looked at a diverse set of candidates. That's at the upper ends where we're still challenged in the engineering space. At the lower ends, we focus on our graduate recruitment. You're not going to have a balanced workforce unless you're taking in as many female graduates as you are male graduates within your business. Now, we cover a range of areas where that can be easier sometimes. In the environmental sciences, we often find a greater level of interest and greater numbers of graduates from female graduates. But across the company, we've tried to maintain that balance in graduating. So bottom up, top down, and patience and persistence and awareness of the issues. I think there are other issues as we started the conversation, we also learnt about. I mean, our employment conditions can suit particular types of workers, and they can not be advantageous for other types of workers. And we had to flesh out some of those challenges across our business. Our expectations around travel, where people have other commitments and other roles they play in families. Our expectations around being able to work flexibly and making sure we've got the technology and systems that regardless of what anyone does day by day, they can work from home, they can work from the office. It's seamless, it's easy, it doesn't disadvantage, and those were some of the enabling factors we brought into play. So that's just a sample. There's probably a bunch of other things Ian or Darren might be able to contribute to here that they've done within their own operations, but it takes a long-term effort. It's not a problem that's solved overnight, but that's something we've been able to do, and we are seeing the improvement. But we look at our, I presented to our shareholders this morning, we've still got a 10% gap probably between our males who participate in our employee ownership program and females who participate in our employee ownership program. And what we've learnt by looking at that and understanding at it is that males and females invest differently. They need different information. Sometimes our financial advisors can present information. A male in the room is prepared to take the risk, go and invest. A female is going to go and consult, potentially with their partners in terms of that investment. And we've learned over time that we have to treat that different or provide flexibility in the way we present our own information around our own employee ownership plan. So all lots of elements to build the ecosystem.
I think the 5 main headings you used were excellent. I think it's not something we see here very often. I think here in the Philippines we sort of focus on what we're doing a bit more. We don't look outside. So I thought your subjects were very good, and I think it sort of makes all of us sort of think a little bit outside of what we normally think about.
Like I said, it's a very thought-provoking concept, and we're going to just close that with Ambassador. Just, she's got a lot on her mind about this. She's a real pioneer of gender equality, and our patron saint here, Philippine Mining Club. Take it away.
Certainly it was most heartwarming to listen to the points you raised. I'm not going to ask a question, perhaps just a comment, that perhaps you'll be pleased to know that the World Economic Forum Gender Equity Index has placed the Philippines for the past 15 years as one of the top 10 countries among 140 countries that has narrowed the gender gap based on the level of education, on health, participation in economic life. While we rejoice in this situation where we find ourselves as Filipino women, for many of us, the gap is not so much perhaps the gender gap, but the gap between women whom I call who have it all and the women who have less or nothing at all. I think for the Philippines, this is a very important and urgent concern because it has led to a lot of instabilities in the south and in the north. But I believe that listening to you and GHD's consciousness in addressing this global challenge of bringing in diversity into the conversation is certainly most welcome. And I'm sure I shared a lot of the feeling of the women in resource development who are here today. We have formed this organization precisely to address that gap. Not so much the gender equality gap, but the gap between women who have so much and women who have less and need more. So thank you so much for bringing this. And GHD, I congratulate for being a thought leader on this conversation. Thank you.
It's the power of the resources industry. The resources industry creates economic benefit, right? It's the facts are clear in every country in the world where there's been quality resources industries and quality governance and quality frameworks. It's actually created great economic opportunity. And I think we've got to do our part to build that trust so that can be enabled within this region, and that will unlock the potential for many more to be able to participate in economic growth. Thanks.
Again, thank you very much. One more question, Joey.
Sandy Giles, are you still here? All right. No, I take exception to your presentation, but as a Filipino, I was shocked at your ending that you think it will take us 100 years to become a nation. For the record, we've been a nation already. I'm sure you know your history. But the thing to remember in your presentation about GDP of the various countries, You have to take it per capita. Just because the Indonesians have a higher GNP than ours, and we have double or more than double our population, doesn't mean they're better off than we. Of course, Malaysia is ahead because they are ahead and they have a smaller population. The last thing I'd like to point out, and we can certainly talk about this, for people in Metro Pacific, the people you work for are all personal friends of mine. The thing to remember is the Philippines has a very large coastline. Our coastline is larger than the United States. And therefore, the demands of our infrastructure are even more than a Thailand, than a Malaysia, than a Vietnam. Even the development of agriculture, it's easier to develop a Thailand and a Vietnam and even Malaysia. You know, the Malaysians have, you know, what, a third of our population, even less, so they have less mouths to feed, no? And I think what we need to do is to have strong leadership in this country. A Lee Kuan Yew, a Filipino Lee Kuan Yew is what we need. And hopefully, if all of us support the president and the president focus on what needs to be done, which he's trying to do, then we'll all be all right. You know, you're in the stock market. I expect something more positive from you than the ending you gave. Nothing personal. I don't know you from Adam. Be happy to talk to you after the event. And you can come with me. I'm going to Batangas and we can talk there. Thank you.
Okay, that's it. We're wrapping up.